Namaste, friends. I'm thankful to IIT Gandhinagar for inviting me to interact with you on such an important topic on concept of theme papers, research papers, and review paper. Before we start, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Shaurya Brahmbhatt, Assistant Professor in the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. Friends, as we have seen in the previous module, where we discussed in detail about what is research. Now in this module, with the help of that, we'll go little bit further to make our concept bit clear regarding theme paper, research paper, and review. Friends, as a student, we know that if we want to make a career in academics, if we want to make our career in field of research, we have to contribute something through our research. And there are ways of representing our research. When I say that research and representation of research, okay, 2-3 things comes in our mind, that PhD, MPhil, or writing a research paper are some points, some aspects which represents our research. But as a teacher, I have seen that there are many confusion, many doubts in the minds of students regarding the research paper, review paper, and theme paper. Sometimes students also confuse themselves with the paper with articles. Okay. So in this module, we will try to learn, we will try to make our concept clear about these points. What is research? What is review? What is theme? Difference between paper and articles. Primary source and secondary source. It is very important for us to have a quick glance on the topic which we have already discussed. What is research? Friends, what exactly we do in a research? We know that communication is a process. Similarly, research is also a process. Research is a creative and systematic work undertaken to increase the stock of knowledge. This is the first definition which we have discussed, and the same discussion will help us in next 2-3 minutes and there is nothing wrong to discuss this point again here, that research increases the stock of knowledge, and there is no doubt about it, and we are agree with it, that research always adds something to the existing knowledge. It widens the horizon of the human understanding. It opens the door of human thinking ability. That's why we call research is a creative and systematic work. It is not an haphazard work. It has its own creativity, it has its own systematic way of work. What we understand by the meaning of systematic? Systematic means methodical. We follow certain methods to involve oneself into the research. And through that involvement, we find some jewels, we find some result, and that result adds something new to the existing knowledge of our field. That's why we say that research is a systematic and creative process which increases the present knowledge of the field. What exactly we do in a research? That research involves the collection, organization, and analysis of information to increase understanding of a topic or issue. We have already discussed that research always starts with a research question. That there is one question before us. There is one issue before us which hinders our journey towards knowledge. And we want to answer those questions. We want to find the answer of those questions. And that common human nature inspires us to explore more into the field of research. And for that, we collect data. We organize that data. After organizing those data, we analyze them. And after analyzing, we may come to a conclusion that where we were wrong or what should be our attitude or what should be the way to the research question or what should be the way to find the solution of a research question. So far so good. I think this background or this understanding that research is a creative and systematic process which adds knowledge in the present form of the field. And how we do research? We collect the data, we organize the data, and we analyze it. And after analyzing, we come to a conclusion. We come to our result. We find result after all. Now, second point is what is review. Okay. A very common dictionary meaning of a review is to observe, to see, to look, to overlook, overall to study the things. That is called a review. There is a very beautiful word in Gujarati for that, is Sinhavlokan. Like a lion on the top of a hill, observe the entire jungle. Till the widest horizons. So, what is review? And how review papers and how review is useful for our research? The purpose of a review paper is to succinctly review recent progress in a particular topic. Overall, the paper summarizes the current state of knowledge of the topic. It creates an understanding of the topic for the reader by discussing the finding presented in recent research papers. You pay your attention here in this definition. The last two words are research paper. So what exactly we do in review? We review research papers And what is the purpose of that review? Why we do review? We review the recent progress of a particular topic. My friends, in this world, so many ignited minds, so many researchers, so many thinkers are working on their levels to find the problems of the human existence. I'm not talking about the problems which we face in our day-to-day life, but the problem of culture, the problem of society, problem of education, problem of teaching and learning, and problem in medicine, in healthcare, in aerospace, and in different fields, different minds, different researchers, scholars are trying their best to find the answer to the research questions. It is very difficult to read the entire research work which has been done in a particular field. Suppose in 2000, if you visit a website of a Scopus and you put some keywords of your area, there will be a facility to select the research paper which were published in year 2019, 20, 2021. You tick mark those checkbox and you will find the entire list of research paper published in Scopus in the year 1920 and 2021. And there may be 1,000 research papers. You need to choose, you need to select the appropriate research paper for your further studies. Suppose there are 1,000 research papers recently written in your field. It is a Herculean task to read those 1,000 research papers. But if you find a review paper which talks about the recent development of your field, by taking the help of the research paper, some important research papers which were published out of those 1,000, that reduces your stress, that reduces your labor, that reduces your energy, your efforts to understand your topic, to understand your field, that what exactly is happening at present. So review paper is nothing but it talks about, or it reviews the research papers of the field. Review paper summarizes. What does it summarizes? It summarizes the important, notable happenings of the field. So many research papers were written in last year on coronavirus. If you are a student of medicine, it is very obvious that you will be interested in reading those research papers. But reading 10, 15, 60 research papers is difficult. So a scholar who reads these research papers, and on the basis of that he writes a review, that what are there in those research papers. The author summarizes the crust, the findings of those research papers. It summarizes the current state of knowledge of that particular topic. And that summary gives you an understanding of the topic in a better way. Say, okay. Remember, my friends, a theme-based paper is an essay where you write something based on a theme which can be derived from a novel, drama, short story, song, poem, or any other literary object that has some form or plot and story in it. This is something very interesting and easy to understand, that theme papers. Many a time we read such kind of theme papers in a literary magazines or sometime in a newspaper, where the author, where the writer of that paper talks about novel, drama, short story, song, poem, which has its own form. See how theme is different than the review paper and the research paper. We will come on that part later on. Let us, initially we are trying to understand these three words in the beginning, that what is research, what is review, and what is theme. Then we will discuss what paper is or what exactly we do in it. So those students who are the student of literature, they might know and aware about that novel, drama, short story are the different genres of creative writings. An author, a writer who writes short stories or a novel or a dramatist. Suppose a writer has written 10 novels, and those 10 novels mainly written in English based on the social condition of a woman in 21st century. Okay, so woman's condition in 21st century, so woman's position or woman's condition in a workplace, one novel talk about woman's position in a workplace, another novel talks about woman's position in a nuclear family, woman's condition in a joint family, woman's condition as a wife, woman's condition as a mother, as a lover. Suppose that writer has wrote 10 novels or 10 short stories on these different themes. So you read those novels, and when you read those novels or a short story, something strikes you. Something you find very common in those novels, those short stories. And you inspire to talk about those common features, those common eye-catching aspects you find in the novel or any literary work per se. You inspire to write down something on those literary texts, that this 10 particular short story or a novel talks about the woman's condition in 21st century, and you write about the plot, you write about the theme of those novel, you write about the story line of those novel and a short story. That is your theme paper. That is why we call theme paper is nothing but it is an essay. It is a literary essay. Why we call it an essay? Because it talks about something which has a framework, which has frame. Drama has its own frame, novel has its own frame, short story has its own frame, and it studies not only the structure that we can see from the outside, that this is a novel, this is the short story. It does not study only the structure. It also studies the plot. It also studies the theme. I'll give you a small example that a king died and a queen died. This is a story. Raja mar gaya, Rani mar gayi. This is a story. But what is the plot of this story? That because of king's death, the queen died. Raja के मृत्यु के कारण रानी भी मर गई. That is the theme. That is the plot. And when you study this thing, which is not easy to understand for everyone, and when you represent that to the audience, to the readers, that is your theme paper. So let me read it out again, that what is theme? That the theme based paper is nothing but it is an essay where you write something based on a theme which can be derived from a novel, drama, short story, song, poem, or any other literary object that has some form or plot and story in it. So we look forward for the stories in it. Now let us discuss the second word which appears in the title. There is a word after the word theme, paper. Research, paper. Review, paper. So it is something very interesting to know that what exactly comes in your mind when you listen this word paper. It is just an A4 size paper, or is it a newspaper, or it's a pamphlet? What is paper? And when you listen a word article, what do you understand by this word article? Some of my students come and they give some piece of papers and say that, sir, I have written one research article. Some student come and say, sir, I have written research paper. So I lightly ask them that last time when you came, you gave me a research paper. This time you are giving me a research article. Then is there any difference in these two forms of the paper which you gave me, or it is just you are playing with the words? And he was a bit confused. He was not sure what to reply. So my friends, research paper and research article both are different things, because the purpose of research paper is different and purpose of research article is different. If that different is clear in our mind, then we will never make any mistake or such silly mistake ever in future as far as paper and articles are concerned. Research articles are published in a journals and magazine. This is the fundamental rule, that research articles are for publication. While papers are presented at conferences. There are many national, international conferences we attend. We go there and we read our paper there. So in a conference, when you read out your research, that is your research paper. And when the same research paper, when you give and submit your manuscript to a research journal or any magazine for publication, that paper become an article. That research paper become a research article. So this is the basic difference which you have to understand, that the research articles are for publication and research papers are for presentation at a national or international conferences or symposiums. A research article is an original research published in a peer-reviewed journal. As we know, as we discussed, that it published in a peer-reviewed journal. However, a research paper is also original research published in a conference and presented as an oral presentation or as a poster. Whereas research paper is also an original. See, these two words are very interesting and very important for us as a student to understand. That research paper and research article, you might be aware about the ethics of research, the ethics we use for research. It is not something that you copy from somewhere and paste in your Word file and make your own. That is not the research. Research is something original. Research is something new. Because we have seen in the definition of research that it adds something new in the existing knowledge system of your field. So both the research papers and research article must have the originality. That is the fundamental requirement. But the only difference is that papers are written for presentation and articles are written to be published. I hope this difference is clear in your mind and that will never puzzle you in future anymore, that what is research paper and what is research article. Your research which you read out in a conference, that research is known as a research paper. And the research which you publish in a journal or a magazine, that particular research becomes your research article. Now, This is something very interesting to know further, that we know two, three things right now, that what is theme, what is research, what is review. The basic difference between paper and article. But do you know that there are also these two words we use in a research process, in review of literature? Because ultimately, every research starts with a research question, following by the review of literature. And in our review of literature, we have two sources, the two major sources through which or from which we, gather the data. Primary sources and secondary sources. So what is that primary sources are? So a research paper is a primary source. You make a note in your mind about research paper, that your research paper is always your primary source. Suppose you are pursuing your PhD or writing your MPhil dissertation, or preparing yourself for writing a research paper, or involving yourself in any research. You need to read something primarily. And those primary texts which you read are your primary sources. So all the research papers published in your field, all research papers, emphasize on this word, all research papers which are published in your field are considered as the primary source through which you collect the data. You understand the existing knowledge of the field. So a research paper is a primary source. It reports the methods and results of an original study performed by the authors. What research paper represents? What research paper exactly does? It reports, it represents the methods and results. Now you remember the definition of research. It is creative and systematic method. When it is creative, when it is systematic method, we have to present our research in a methodical way. We have to present the result which we get in a methodical way. And writing a research is, again, it's a creative thing. I'll come on that point later. So it reports. So ultimately research paper reports what? The methods which you use during your research, and the methods through which you got the results of an original study performed by the author, performed by you as a researcher. The kind of study may vary. It could have been an experiment. It could have been survey, it could have been interview, etc. But in all cases, raw data have been collected and analyzed by the authors. And conclusions drawn from the results of that analysis. Why we consider research paper as a primary resource? Because research paper contains these many things. Research papers represent the methods which we have, or the author, the method which has been used by the researcher in that research. The way of research could be anything. It could be experiment, it could be survey, it could be interview. But ultimately, the research paper talks about how the data was collected. So the method tells you about the procedure of data collection. The research paper tells you about that after collecting the data, how the researcher, how the author has organized those data in a systematic way, in a systematic manner. And after organizing those data, through which theory, through which tool, those data, organized data, was analyzed. So research paper talks to us and gives us the 3 steps, systematic representation of these things, that how the data are collected, how the data is analyzed, organized, and how the data is analyzed. So that's why we consider research paper as the primary source, because it gives us the profound understanding of what exactly has been done by the researcher in that particular research. And now we have another word, that is secondary source. Make another note in your mind, friends, that a review paper is a secondary source, whereas research paper is a primary source because it talks about the research in particular way, whereas review papers and theme papers are your secondary resource. Why we consider it as a secondary resource? Why review papers are secondary resource? That also involves research. Is it so? Remember, my friends, that review paper does not involve into the research process, but review papers talk about the research which has been done in your field, the important research which has been done in few years, in few months. So research review papers are basically written about the articles, about the research. So review paper is not a research paper, it is a paper about the research. Review paper is a paper about the research and does not report original research of its own. This is another important point we have to remember, that why and how this research paper and review paper are different than each other, because research paper carries originality, whereas review paper does not carry that originality. It talks about the originality of various originalities of various research papers, but review paper has not its own original research in it. It just tell you about a small story of what has been done by some researcher in this particular field. So I read it out again, that it is written about other articles. Review paper is nothing but it is about the research papers. It is a summary of research papers or research articles, and that's why it's known as a secondary resource, because it does not carry that originality, whereas research paper has originality. That's why it's a primary source. Review paper has no originality. That's why we consider it as a secondary source. But still, in research, review papers are very important, as they draw upon the articles that they review to suggest new research direction. In our Indian tradition, we always praise the traveler, the yatri, who reaches to its destination. We celebrate the victory that someone has, overcome the summit, achieved the summit of a mountain. But in our tradition, we also give equal importance to a person who gives the direction, जिन्होंने दिशा दिखाई, उसका भी उतना ही महत्व है. This is what we believe in, that the review papers are such which gives direction to the research, for the further research. So what exactly a researcher or a writer, review paper writer, does in his writing, that it gathers some good research paper, study them thoroughly, write about it, and give some suggestions that what could be the possible direction for the further research. It may gives you a list of do's and don'ts in it. It strengthens or support for existing theories. The students who are studying humanities, they are aware about the various theories which we apply in our research, in our empirical research. And to strengthen our argument, to strengthen our logic behind our research, such review papers are very useful, because it strengthens our logical argument to support the existing theories and identify patterns among existing research studies. This is again another important point which has been discussed by review papers. To identify patterns among existing research studies. If you Google out some keywords, that what kind of research has been done or what kind of research papers has been written in last year, And you'll be happy to see, and I won't be surprised to see that most of the thinkers, researchers, scholars try to explore that how our education can become online, and it if impact on teachers, and it studies the impact on the understanding of the students, and whatnot. So if you study a review paper, or if you want to write a review paper, you just go to the some good websites which can, like a JSTOR or a Scopus, which provides you some good research papers to read. Okay, and if you read them, that will give you an idea to understand the pattern of what kind of research is exactly going on in your field. So review papers have their own importance in our research journey as a second source, because it gives us an idea to understand the various patterns of the study which has been done by the researcher in the past or in the recent past. For student, researchers review articles provide a great overview of the existing literature on a topic. If you find a literature review that fits your topic, take a look at its reference, works, cited list for leads on other relevant articles and books. And this is how the secondary research is useful for us. Review papers are useful for us. Now, very quickly, let me brief you again that up till now we have discussed the concept of theme paper, concept of research paper, and a concept of review paper. We also try to understand the difference between paper and article. And apart from that, we also try to understand the primary source and secondary source, the originality of research and the summary of original research. Now, let me tell you in a very brief about the format of a research paper. Suppose you, after listening these things, you may inspire to write something in of your field. You wish to write a research paper. So always a research paper starts with an introduction. Okay, a brief introduction will often include a review of existing literature of the topic studied and explain the rationale of author's study. This is important because it demonstrates that the authors are aware of existing studies and are planning to contribute to this existing body of research in a meaningful way. So, always, that's why a brief introduction or good introduction is always advised by the guides or by the readers or by the writers, that your introduction should be very brief and effective, because if the introduction is good, the entire growth of your research paper will be good. So the quality of your introduction will decide the growth of your paper. The second stage after good introduction, a method section where authors describe how they collect and analyze data. Statistical analysis are included. This section is quite detailed, and as it's important that other researchers be able to verify and or replicate the same methods. So the second part, after introduction, the second part is the method section, where you elaborate, you present that how you collected data, how you organize the data, and how you analyze the data, so that in future other researcher can also use the same data in their research. After that, a result section describes the outcomes of your data analysis. Charts, graphs illustrating the results are typically included. In the discussion, authors will explain their interpretation of the results and theories on their importance to existing and future research. And finally, each research paper ends with references, and the work cited are always included. These are the articles and the books that authors drawn upon to plan their study and to support their discussion. So my friend, in brief, let us recall all the points which we have discussed so far in this module, that we tried to understand the concept of theme paper, research paper and review paper. By discussing, in our discussion we discussed what is theme, what is research and what is review. We also discussed the difference between paper and article. We also discussed the originality of paper, which makes a research paper as a primary source, and review paper as a secondary source. And at last, we discussed the format of a research paper, that it starts with an introduction, then it talks about the methods which are involved in your research. Third, it talks about the conclusion, the findings of your research. And fourth, where you cite the work, the books, the research paper which have been used during your research. With this note, I end the session. Thank you very much. Namaste.